Hello everyone, and welcome to the first event in our Google Students virtual series. There will be 5 events in this series, and over the next few weeks, we're able to offer you a talk on building your career in tech, a CV workshop, a tech talk based on the research paper Autopilot by Google Cloud, a technical interview workshop, and a Women in Tech panel. This is more content than we've ever been able to offer students before, and the best part is, you don't even have to leave your home to get it. We'll be taking some live questions at the end of this event, so please leave your questions in the comment box throughout, and we'll try and get to as many as we can at the end, and we'll also be announcing the winner of the swag prize. This event series was brought to you by the University Programmes team. We're small but mighty, and between only a few of us, we look after all of the different countries and universities in EMEA. My name is George and I live in London, and I'm a specialist in the University Programmes team. I've been at Google for 4 years, and in that time I've had a few different job roles, all within the People Operations organisation. My fun fact is that I've won the Google Bake Off a few years ago. I'm now going to let the rest of the team introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name's Emily. I've been on the University Programmes team at Google for about 3 years. I'm also based in London. And my fun fact is that I recently adopted a cat, which makes me what we call a Mugler. That's a Googler who loves cats.
Hi everyone, I'm Nikki. I'm also a University Programme Specialist, currently in the Zurich office or at home. I am the University Programme Specialist for almost a year, or actually a bit more over a year, but I've been at Google for more than 5 years. My fun fact is that I started at Google Poland. Later on moved to Ireland, and as I said, now I'm based in the Zurich office. And the fun fact is that my last name is actually coming originally from Poland.
So you'll be seeing a lot more of Emily and Nikki during the next 5 weeks as the virtual event series Build for Everyone continues. Typically at this time of year, we'd be visiting universities in person. Some of you might even recognise us. But this year we'll be doing all of our outreach virtually from home, which means we'll be able to reach more students in more locations than ever before. We've chosen the theme of Build for Everyone for our events, which is so fitting with Google's mission statement from right back when it was founded. It's been 22 years since Larry and Sergey founded Google, and while the growth and the scale of the company has changed since those early days in California, our mission of making the world's information universally accessible and useful has never changed. This mission is special to me because no matter what role you have at the company, whether it's in sales, in tech, or in marketing, all of us are held to the same standards, which is ensuring that the projects and the products that we work on are creating meaningful impact to our users. Since all of us have different experiences and backgrounds, we don't all think or work similarly. For myself, I tend to work better in the mornings versus other teammates who might work better in the afternoons. I find that my best ideas come in the morning when my brain is fresh and I've had a coffee. And that's what's great at working about Google, because you can be really flexible about your working hours. By everyone having different perspectives and work styles, fresh ideas come from anywhere and from anyone at the company. For example, Area 120 is a new startup inside of Google, where small teams can pitch ideas and spend 100% of their time on an idea that might not otherwise have been explored. Googlers have 6 months to define and meet ambitious milestones, and anyone can join. You're also encouraged to explore the things that make you who you are, and there's a level of respect and support where you need it to make things a little easier to be yourself at work. For example, we have employee resource groups, which are Googler-led initiated networks with a shared background or interest groups. Some of these groups might support our values around diversity and inclusion, and these include the Black Googler Network, Pride at Google, who are from the LGBT+ community, Ability at Google, who are Googlers with disabilities, and some are interest groups, Dooglers, who are Googlers who bring their dogs to work, Yoglers are Googlers who like doing yoga, and the list goes on. There really is something for everyone. While we still have a lot of work to do, we're committed to fostering diversity inclusion by having an open dialogue. Our Talks at Google series, which features innovators who challenge our thinking, understanding bias, and provide workshops to help us understand the impact, and sharing our workforce representation numbers, which shows our commitment to creating an inclusive culture for everyone. Having a workforce with diverse backgrounds is not only the right thing to do, but research shows that this can increase performance, earning, innovation, and better products. All of these examples bring us back to this core theme that we work together and not the same. Different perspectives, small teams, and opportunities to express ideas help create an environment where every Googler can thrive. One of the things I really like about my team is how we all have different expertise and experiences. Emily is great at learning virtual platforms, which has been really handy for today's event. Nikki is an expert in analytics and data, and this helps our very small team as we are constantly learning from each other. One of my favourite aspects of working here is the personal growth opportunities available to keep you learning and growing. For example, if you want to build your public speaking, programming language, manager training, or learn how to play the guitar, we provide what we call Grow classes, which are learning and development resources and classes often led by Googlers. We also provide educational benefits for you to take courses or trainings outside of work. We also encourage internal mobility. What's nice about being in a bigger company is that there's a large and evolving product and product portfolio. Depending on your passions and interests, we want you to find your own career and make those moves work for you. What you're doing today might be something completely different to what you're going to be doing in 5 years' time, and that's really exciting. If you don't want to change your role completely, you have the opportunity to work on a 20% project, or even sign up for a rotation program or a bungee to explore different roles and teams and places for just a short period of time. In short, we really want you to own your own career at Google. We want you to make moves that feel right for you, and for us, it's about making sure that we provide the resources and the internal mobility so that you and your role can evolve together. Lastly, during unexpected times of crisis, you'll find out that not only we are there for each other, we also have the support of our leaders when we're in the face of global and community challenges. Our crisis response team works with local authorities and first responders to provide access to critical information and resources when people need them the most. It's also important to give back to the community that we live and work in. Google Serve, like in this picture, is our annual volunteering campaign in which Googlers around the world can participate in community volunteer opportunities addressing local needs. If you're passionate about a charity, Googlers Give allows you to donate to a charity of your choice, and Google will match your donations. You can also volunteer your time at an organisation in which Google will give money for the number of hours that you volunteered. We're now going to move on to 2 lightning talks that we have for you today. These talks are designed to be short and snappy, and they're going to give you all the information that you need in a really small amount of time. We'll hear from Anna talking about digital well-being and the amazing Flip to Shush feature. And we're also going to hear from Faze about his work with our next billion users. So I'm going to pass over to Anna now for talk number 1.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna. I'm so excited to be here with you all for these lightning tech talks around building for everyone. For a bit about me, I'm a software engineer based out of Google London, where I've worked almost 3 years now. I work specifically on digital well-being tools for Android. These tools aim to help users find their right balance with technology. We've launched many features, things like bedtime mode, which silences your phone at night, a dashboard which visualizes your phone usage, and app limits, which actually limit your time on an app by suspending the app after you've used your daily limit. One of the most impactful and technically interesting features I've gotten to work on is called Flip to Shush. If you haven't heard of the feature, I'll let the video describe what it does.
Hush, little baby. Oh, no. Shh, 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 shh.
It's a very important shot.
Oh, no.
miles to the west. My phone's ringing.
That's embarrassing.
I'm so sorry.
I absolutely loved that video, and I hope you all did too. I know from the video that this looks like a super easy and intuitive gesture, but the engineering side of building this was actually not simple at all. Flip to Shush uses dependencies across the Android operating system, which I'll walk you through. So the first step in Flip to Shush is actually noticing the gesture being flipped over. We use sensors built into Pixel devices to look for this gesture. These gesture sensors are actually different than your device's camera and are looking only for acceleration changes and proximity changes, which uses a lot less battery than running the full camera to look if you're near a surface or not. When the device has just been flipped over to be near a surface and then remained flat, these gesture sensors alert digital well-being. The sensors actually have to notify digital well-being because, again, to save battery, digital well-being isn't always running on your phone, and it's only woken up when there's something to respond to, in this case, the Flip to Shush gesture. Once awoken, digital well-being then triggers Do Not Disturb. Do Not Disturb silences any new messages and calls, and we start Do Not Disturb in the same way as all other Android applications, where we add a Do Not Disturb rule called Flip to Shush into the Android operating system. Lastly, digital well-being triggers a very subtle vibration of the device. It's quiet enough that it can't be heard because you are trying to silence your phone when you flipped it, but it can be felt lightly if you keep your hand on the device. And this is to notify the user that Flip to Shush did turn Do Not Disturb on successfully. Now, this all seems relatively straightforward to walk through. Unfortunately, some of these steps are much harder than others. For us, our biggest challenge for launch came from our gesture algorithm. At first, we thought we had nailed the gesture. We tested it on what we thought was everything imaginable, from dark surfaces to glass table to mirrored surfaces, everything. We thought we were really close to launch and decided to start having other Googlers test out our feature. But something came next that we hadn't anticipated. So the team primarily working on building Flip to Shush was female, across product managers to our engineering team. A recent study found that women's jeans pockets are 48% shorter and 6.5% narrower than men's pockets. Now, this might sound like a very trivial difference, and you're probably wondering what it has to do with Flip to Shush. The researchers also tested which of the classic pocket fitting items, from keys to phones to wallets, could fit into both men's and women's pockets. They found only 20 to 40% of women's jeans could fit different common phones, whereas over 95% of men's jeans could fit standard phones. So our gap as a primarily female team was testing Flip to Shush with large enough pockets to hold a phone. Our gap specifically was that our gesture algorithm broke when anyone who could put their phone fully into their pocket sat down. From the gesture's perspective, sitting down triggered the exact same things as flipping the phone. The acceleration of the phone went from moving to suddenly being still, and it was flipped over with fabric near to the proximity sensor saying it was covered. As you all know, at Google, we build for everyone. So not working on large pockets, which meant not working for most men who sit down, was a launch blocker. We dedicated our next few weeks to the subtle differences in flipping a phone versus sitting down, and we're able to adjust the algorithm around the different acceleration speeds of the flip versus sitting. In fact, in the push to get this launched on time, we even had our product manager, pictured here, Rose, coming into work every day wearing her husband's jeans and, of course, a phone always in her pocket. In the end, we built Flip to Shush for everyone, including those lucky enough to have large pockets. If you do have a Pixel device, be sure to check it out, and I hope you find the feature more simple and intuitive to use than it was to build. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Anna. That was super interesting. I'm definitely going to be checking that out on my Pixel. Next up, we have Face, and he's going to talk to us about next billion users.
Hi, everyone. I'm Face. I'm a product manager within Google Research, and I'm based out of the London office. And I've been at Google for around 5 years now. So one of the great things about working at Google is that there is so much cool stuff happening across the different parts of the company. But what's even more great is that it's pretty easy to get involved with things that you find interesting. So one of the things that I find interesting is finding solutions for what we call the next billion users, or NBU, which refers to the next billion users that will be coming online for the first time. So when I found out that there was a team being put together to launch a product for the NBU, I asked my manager if I can be involved, and then lo and behold, I found myself working with a team of engineers, designers, and lawyers to make it happen. So to set the scene, I'm based in London. My engineering team is in Zurich, and my marketing team is in Singapore. And we want to first launch in India, but then in Indonesia, and then Mexico, and then maybe somewhere else. So this leads to an interesting problem. How do you build for users from a different culture to you on the other side of the world? Most of my engineering team hadn't even been to India before starting on the product. So the only way you can really empathize with your user is by listening to them. And at Google, we take this very seriously. And I was lucky enough to be able to go with my whole team to India, spending a few weeks in rural villages and interviewing our users on their experiences and finding out how we might be able to improve them. So these are actual photographs that I took from some of my visits there. And the funny thing is, we would often remember individual people and their stories when we were back in our offices working on the product. To understand why this is important, let's take a very basic decision, picking the color for our product's icon. So it turns out that what we might associate with certain colors, for example, I might associate green with envy or black with death and so on, is very culture specific. Certain colors in India, for example, have religious connotations. So we had to do a lot of research to find relevant color palettes for the users in each country. Personally, I found this fascinating. It's amazing how each culture has its own sense of style, art, and fashion. So just as an exercise for yourselves, I've put 4 groups of palettes here. Can you match the countries with the group? I'll give you a few seconds at home before I give it away. So on the left-hand side, on the top left, we have Indonesia, and on the bottom left, we have Mexico, that are both rooted in the country's nature. So Indonesia has lots of stone and water and wood, and it's very muted and earthy colors. Whereas Mexico has nature, but it's sky and grass and terracotta. On the right-hand side, on the top, we have Nigeria, and on the bottom, we have India, both very sort of more boisterous, more vibrant. India has its rose, saffron, and teal, and Nigeria has its own very loud and boisterous colors. How many of them did you get right? So even more broadly, beyond colors, our general aesthetic style is cultural too. And we have to be careful with trying to force our tastes on our users. I saw this firsthand when I showed a mock-up of our results page, which we designed to be clean and minimalist, to one of our users, and after a while, he asked if the app had crashed because he thought it hadn't finished loading. The apps and websites he used had much greater information density, and he felt a little frustrated with how we laid out the page. One of the reasons for this too is that the average screen size for the NBU is much lower than, say, in Western Europe. So we have to test our designs for all types of devices, from feature phones to the latest Pixel XL. And because we supported different languages, this meant a short sentence in English, for example, a button that has the word select, might take up half the screen in Malayalam. We also had to make sure it would run on much older versions of Android and browsers and not take up too much memory or data and work with spotty internet connections. To do this, we used emulators, but also a whole range of physical phones that we would test up, as well as different Wi-Fi networks that we set up around the office to run at different speeds, like at 2G or 3G, so that we could ensure we were providing the best experience we could. So these are just some of the things you might not think about if you're only used to building for a particular country or culture. But at Google, we're building for everyone, regardless of where they come from. And as a product manager, you're given everything you need to make sure that happens. All right, thanks all.
Thanks, Faze. That was really interesting. I'm now going to pass over to Nikki, who's going to talk to you about the roles and the opportunities at Google.
Perfect. We hope today helps you to see that we are building a company where people of different views, backgrounds, and experiences can do their best work and show for one another. When finding the next generation of Googlers, we look for our leadership, Googliness, insight, imagination, and healthy disregard for the impossible. Together, we can build for everyone. So what roles await you here? The first one we want to talk to you about is STEP program, Student Training and Engineering Program. This is a program for first-year undergraduate students that are currently studying a 3-year bachelor degree, or first or second year students that are of a 4 or 5-year bachelor degree program. This is a program that is aimed at historically underrepresented demographics in tech. STEP interns are paired with 2 engineering co-hosts and 1 other intern in the pod for mentorship and support. STEP interns work in all product areas and are on production level code and are in software engineering and site reliability engineering roles. They also are assigned a mentor outside of their working group. These internships are available in multiple locations across EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, but dates are fixed for all interns. Usually, it begins at the start of July, and it's a 12-week internship program. Then we also have software engineering internship. This is open to all students in their first year of university, all the way to the penultimate year, who studies computer science or a related technical field. You can find more information on our website and on google.com/students. Students should apply for internship as soon as the requisition open. When you apply for any software engineering or STEP internship that I talked to you a little bit earlier, in any location in Europe, Middle East, or Africa, you're automatically considered for all of those locations. We interview you generally for our internship program rather than for a specific team or location, although you can indicate the preference. This gives you the flexibility to get matched to a project across any of our products, such as Android, Chrome, YouTube, any product you can think of. I've already mentioned it, but internships are paid full-time and start date for those might be flexible. The minimum duration is 13 weeks. And many of our new grad hires are previously interns. So it's kind of an opportunity for us to get to know you and equally for you to assess us as our potential full-time employer. Some people do multiple internships with us without re-interviewing. Chances to try different sort of products within Google, locations, etc. Or you can, of course, just need to perform in order to have that extra next opportunity. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the Associate Product Manager internship. We also sort of call it APM. And these managers work closely with a team of creative engineers to help develop technologies and Google products. APMs are responsible for guiding products through the whole execution cycle, from conception and design to launch and iteration. This role is great for engineers with extraordinary leadership skills who enjoy problem solving and people. Technical experience is necessary because APMs work closely with engineering, but they also should have business acumen and passion for strategy. So now let's move to the full-time roles. The first full-time role I wanted to talk about is a software engineer. So if you are, for example, a student in your last year of university and you are not planning on returning back to your studies, you would be actually eligible for a software engineer full-time role. Google software engineers develop the next generation of technologies that change how millions of users connect, explore, and interact with information and with one another. Software engineers work on small teams and can switch teams and projects as our fast-paced business grows and evolves. Each software engineer is a vital member of their team, tackling answers to really big questions. As a second full-time role I wanted to mention is a site reliability engineer. Site reliability engineers keep Google going pretty much everywhere, all the time. Whether focusing on code level troubleshooting, building new infrastructure, or maintaining our most advanced services, site reliability engineers, or so-called SREs, are basically making sure everything works the way it's supposed to work. As a scalability expert, SREs design, build, and run large-scale systems and also ensure that the code for our large systems is always reliable, resilient, efficient, and available. And in essence, they ensure it always works for our users. SRE is a job function, yes, but it's also a mindset and a set of engineering approaches to running a better production system. And all approach with a spirit of constructive pessimism. They hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So now these were all the roles I wanted to mention, both internship roles and the full-time roles we have. And I just wanted to mention that all of those information can be also searched on google.com/buildyourfuture, and you can check this site for further information.
Thanks so much, Nikki. That was super interesting. We're going to be back in 1 minute for a live Q&A, and we're going to cover some of the top questions that you've left in the comments. So do stay tuned, and we'll be back in a minute.
Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for joining our event today. We really hope that you enjoyed it. And welcome to the Q&A section, where we're going to be answering some of your top questions live. I'm joined here by our speakers, Face and Anna. We'd really also love to get your feedback. So if you can see the survey, which is to one side of the screen, I've forgotten which side, that would be really great so that we can continue to improve these virtual events. Also, I just want to confirm that this event was recorded, so if you missed anything, you will be able to watch it later as well. So we'll get started with the Q&A in just a moment, but first I wanted to announce our first winner of our swag prize. So we'll be announcing one winner of a Google branded swag prize per event, and this week it is Ofunimi from University of Abuja in Nigeria. So congratulations, and we'll be in touch with you soon about receiving your prize. So let's kick off with the Q&A now. So let's start with the first question that we're asking to all of our speakers, given that our theme on this series is Build for Everyone. Anna, what does Build for Everyone mean to you?
Yeah, hello everyone. For me, building for everyone is really about respecting the incredible scale that all of our products are launching on. So our products are launching to millions of users, and having build for everyone at top of mind means that when we're building a feature, we're thinking about ensuring a good experience for everyone. On the engineering side, this means we're thinking about everything from how do we ensure good translations for all users everywhere? How do time formats work? We can't assume or kind of hard code what a weekend is because it changes in different countries. How we can ensure touch targets are large enough for everyone to actually tap the buttons on their screen, to even having screen reading navigation on Android phones for those who can't see their phone or who can't see well, to actually talk to them and tell them what's on their screen as they swipe through.
Great, thank you, Anna. And same question to Face.
Yeah, I thought it would come to me. Hi, everyone. So I think for me as a product manager, building for everyone means making sure that anyone who wants to use my product can. And so that means every day I have to show up and advocate for all our potential users, as well as our existing ones at every meeting, whether it comes to sort of design choices or engineering ones. And I guess I'm there to try to remove assumptions about the capabilities and sort of circumstances of our users and their devices, and to essentially make sure that the experience is delightful rather than surprising or frustrating.
Great, thank you. So let's now move on to some of the questions that we received in the comments. And thank you so much, everyone that left us comments. So this question was for Anna. What are the best things that you like or love about working at Google?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, but the top things that I love really are, I think, working in a team environment. Compared to uni, you often have kind of projects on your own. But at Google, you have this kind of ongoing group project with a group of other engineers that allows you to build things so much faster and so much bigger than you could build alone. And then the kind of second obvious one is the impact. So you're launching on a completely different scale than projects where you're kind of just doing it to get an assignment or a grade. You're actually launching these to real users who are actually going to be using your features in the wild. And it's always the coolest moment when you actually meet someone or see someone on their Android device using your feature. And then the last thing is just the culture of Google. There's a lot around kind of dreaming big, nothing being too impossible, really thinking about what are the biggest problems in the world today that we're kind of potentially able to help solve, and how can we possibly kind of make progress towards solving these.
Great, thank you so much, Anna. And Face, anything to add there on the best things you like about working at Google?
I think Anna stole all the good ones. Certainly, there's all that, and there's just a whole bunch of other things, right? I think that dreaming big piece that Anna mentioned, I think that's something that definitely is the one that kind of gets me up and going, because it's like, well, where else really are you going to have such like huge impact? And you measure things with billions with a B, and so that's definitely, I think, the core one for me.
Amazing. Thanks, Face. So, Anna, we got a bunch of questions around your story on Flip to Shush. So the first one, how much collaboration generally is there typically across Google teams, especially between development and research? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I think one of the big kind of aspects of Google is the openness. So they really do want you to always be talking with other teams, looking for areas of collaboration. I think within research, there's always challenges of kind of finding ways to actually bring research into a product, but this is something that Google is invested in. And there's features in Android. I don't know if you guys have heard of adaptive brightness, but it actually changes the brightness of your screen based on times of day and your different patterns of when you adjust it. And this was actually a collaboration with the DeepMind, which is a more research-based organization, and Google. And then in general, most features at Google aren't isolated in kind of a single area. Even with Flip to Shush, you heard all the different steps of different places that the features coded in, and those have different teams that you're working with for every single part. And that's very common at Google. So there's very rarely that you have a feature that's just you on your own kind of coding in isolation without collaboration.
Great, thanks, Anna. And then also around Flip to Shush, how did you tackle phones being thrown into purses? Does the sensor recognize that it's in a purse, or do the stipulations need to activate Flip to Shush? Like, does that not fully exist in such a wide space?
Yeah, this was the case this was one of the cases we thought we were prepared for testing with the kind of glass tables and things like that. And it turned out to not really we haven't seen it yet be a problem. I think generally, typically when you put something in a purse, the acceleration is much faster than when you're actually flipping it. And then the other one is because the proximity sensor is looking for being far away from a surface and then near to a surface. Typically in a purse, it's almost always near other surfaces. So it's rare to have the kind of, I'm sure it is possible and someone can try it and prove me wrong, but it's very rare to have the from far away to surface and then the acceleration straight into the kind of flat gravity that we look for. So it was the pockets that ended up with the kind of slower acceleration and then the just staying flat and being perfectly straight down.
Great. And I guess a follow-up kind of two-part question also around Flip to Shush. First of all, is it available on other Androids? And then also, what type of sensor is used to detect the surfaces? And on that, what if the phone's kept face up and someone places something on it by mistake? Is that also another problem? Or how did you kind of tackle that?
Yeah, so Flip to Shush is currently Pixel only, though we do kind of have ongoing conversations with we call them OEMs, but other devices. The difficulty there is that actually every device manufacturer manufactures with different sensors. So there's kind of different sensitivities and different calibrations you have to do on each device. And so it's actually a bit more difficult to scale. And even though we'd love to do it, it may or may not happen, depends how much collaboration we have with these partners. In terms of detecting the surface, so we're looking for kind of being near to a surface which uses the proxenter. You can actually see it often on a device. It's just a tiny little circle. It's much smaller than the camera. And that's literally just looking for kind of light input. And then when there's zero light input, then it says, we're near to something, versus the camera is obviously taking in a lot more data than just, is it light or dark? So the prox sensor can run constantly with much less battery usage than something like your camera. And then for the last one, if it's kept face up and you put something on it, there's also a gravity sensor within your phone. I know there's a lot of sensors. And that is what we use to actually know that it's face down.
Great, thanks, Anna. Now we have a question for Face. Which tools do you use to elicit and collect requirements from potential users of Google products and services? Do you use agile user stories?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So I think it actually reflects something more broadly about Google, which is there isn't really a set sort of methodology that is, or a principle that works across Google. There's certainly for engineering practices, there's best practices, there are style guidelines, and there are suggestions. But when it comes to how your team works and how it how you operate as a team, that's kind of very much left open to you. So the team that I was previously in was worked in an agile way, but the one that I'm in now currently doesn't. And so an interesting thing about Google is that people will help you work in whichever way that you feel it will make your team most effective. So, for example, there are like internal tools, and we have licenses for external tools for teams that want to work with Kanban, and there are teams that want to work with Scrum, and then user stories can be useful for that, and it helps you prioritize and burn down things like that. But there are teams that don't do that, and there are people who sort of just write a very sort of it almost seems old-fashioned now, but PRDs and critical user journeys and building all those out, and that's fine too. So it's very much up to the team within Google, and so it's not something that we'll say like, oh, you have to know this, and it's like the de facto standard across all of Google. You'll go from a team in YouTube to a team somewhere else in Google to Drive to research, and or even with the same team within the same TA, and they might be structured slightly differently for good reasons. And then if you feel like you want to shift that direction, then you're also free to kind of do that too. So I guess yes and no, depending on where you sit within Google.
Great, thanks, Faith. And another question for you. Apart from the cultural differences, are there any technical differences in applications launched in different countries?
Well, that's a great question. Yes. So I think I mentioned some of the things when I talked about the difference in devices that you typically find in places where they are consuming mobile. Where they're consuming the internet primarily over mobile. So there is a push certainly now to go for larger screens, but there is definitely, we found, looking at analytics, that there is a preponderance of very sort of, like phones with sort of limitations. So it could be feature phones, or it could just be very old phones. It could be, memory constraints, sorry. So that really has an effect on the types of things that we can do. So, for example, your flagship program, your flagship Pixel, for example, can do lots of very nifty on-device machine learning type of cool stuff, and that's not something that you can rely on everywhere in the world, because not everybody has access to that kind of technology yet. That's hopefully something that we can change. But that's part of it. So it's how do we use programming effectively? It's a great engineering challenge to use, as little memory and data as possible, and also being very fault tolerant when it comes to, internet connections. Do you use synchronous or asynchronous? How much stuff are you actually consuming? Can you be really smart about the way you store things and compress things and the data structures you use? And all of that sort of stuff has to play seamlessly, across the experience that they have. The other thing that ties into that is the engineering challenge of trying to give advanced functionality on operating systems that really didn't, or versions of the operating system that didn't have those things in mind. So, we have a lot of phones that are running much, much older versions of Android that, we typically see, say, North America or, Western Europe. But we still want the users to have at least, a feature parity with, phones or on other phones. So how do we try to get that type of functionality inside? So it could be, using some shivs or some polyfill or some way to like emulate the functionality and capabilities of other features. And there's another part. So there's that engineering piece, and there's also the design piece, which I think is very much a technical problem, which is what kind of UX patterns should you use for very small screens? Like, what is if you have very small real estate, how do you use that effectively? When you have all the space in the world, it's very easy to sort of have menus that slide in from the left and have hamburger menus and three dots, and it's fine because it's all well spaced out. So it doesn't. But if you're trying to put that to a very small screen, say it's 3 inches or less, and suddenly it's very, very cluttered. So trying to reinvent, patterns for phones that are very small screens and sizes, and different refresh rates and how well it can re-render things. So you can't just have something that's just continuously redrawing. That's a horrible engineering, practice anyway, but you wouldn't be able to get away with it, is what I'm saying, on some of the phones that we have to deal with in the emerging market. So I think that's certainly a couple of things that I've had to deal with my engineering teams when working with applications for the emerging markets.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Faith. That's so interesting. So the next question, I think I can answer this, but I will open it up in case either of you have an experience in this space. How easy is it to switch between different Google locations, e.g. when moving to another city? So I would say, current situation aside, pretty easy. We have a relocation team who help with this, and we also really encourage internal mobility at Google. One of the reasons that we have quite generalist software engineering interviews for interns, graduates, etc., is because we really want people that could eventually work on any team at Google. And we really like to have this kind of flexible internal mobility where if you are interested in something and want to move into that space, that's something that your manager would also encourage you to do. And we have shifting priorities a lot in a big company where we work at such scale. So this is definitely something that we keep in mind. And we try to make it relatively easy to switch teams or switch locations. Anna and Faith, do either of you have a personal example of that at all? You only worked in one location.
I've worked in a few, but I did them through internships. So I interned in Google LA working on YouTube. And then for my next internship, I was in Boston working on Google Travel. And then for full time, I fully relocated to London, where I've been the past almost 3 years now.
Great. Cool.
I suppose technically I've always been in the London office, but that itself is actually an interesting story because the first team that I joined, my entire team was based in San Francisco. But I couldn't move there. So my wife was doing her residency in a big London hospital. And so I said, well, I'd love to join the team, but I've actually happened to be stuck in London for a little while my wife finishes up her training. And that was completely okay. They worked with me to sort of figure out how to, shift our time and manage expectations and around, when I'll be online and offline. And we just sort of made it work. And then obviously, that kind of pays dividends because now that my wife's finished, we're kind of looking again at potentially moving again wherever my team might need me, and that's all because of the flexibility that Google really allows when working remotely, and that's also because of the amazing tools that we have that are building it. So we're actually very ready, to be able to work remotely. So that's all kind of works in your favor. So you have all of the massive and great Google product working for you in that sense.
Definitely. And we actually had another question, which is kind of around this. Is it harder to work online rather than at an office? So obviously offices gather people to create new ideas, solve problems together on a whiteboard. How do you manage to stay in touch now remotely? I think Faith has kind of covered that a bit with your team, but yeah, anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I think there is challenges for sure. I think every team does kind of come up with ways that they're going to try to stay in touch. With my team, we have a few social syncs each week, and then we have a team that really loves bubble tea, including myself. So every Thursday we have kind of a bubble tea and demo social where people demo anything they might have built that week that was cool or interesting, and then we just have bubble tea and chat. In terms of kind of problem solving together, things like that, people will easily kind of do breakout rooms and then they can still discuss their technical problems. We still have kind of Google drawings within Google Docs, so you can still draw things together. So there's a lot of kind of tools and ways we can do this. It's not the exact same as being in person, but in the meantime, it does help us.
Great, thanks, Anna. So, and kind of around having a team with lots of people with different experiences, obviously this is something that Georgina touched on at the beginning of the event. What benefits have you experienced working with teammates from different cultures, if you have any experience around that?
Wow, I'm just thinking, I don't even know where to start. I can't even imagine myself working in a place that doesn't have that sort of diversity now. It's very odd. I've been here for coming on to 5 years, and knowing that you have this sort of diversity of just voices and experiences and just really interesting stories. So, you know, I have to do a lot of travel for, you know, meeting my various teams, and just the stories that, you know, you hear from their sort of upbringing or the challenges they've overcome or you know, their story. I've yet to find a Googler who hasn't got some interesting story about, you know, what they've done. And, you know, it's one of those things where you know, you only learn like after working with someone like after like 2 years that they're like an Olympian, or they, you know, that they, you know, crochet like 6-foot dolls, or, you know, like there's such a plethora of amazing like talent and interests out there that it really, and I feel like most of that stems from the folks, and the reason that they have that is because they come from like various different cultures that give you an understanding on various things. And this is, you know, really, really useful for me for when I was obviously in the PU project, reaching out to, you know, folks who were based in India when we wanted to like test our hypotheses. So we do something called dog fooding, and that, you know, that phrase comes from like eating your own dog food, which means, you know, testing our own products and using our own products. And so we really wanted to make sure that, you know, the experience we had, well, you know, resonated with, you know, folks who actually use it. So, you know, we asked some folks in the, you know, in Google India, and we, you know, before we even reached out to do, you know, ethnographic studies and user interviews, and we learned so much from just talking to individual Googlers from India, you know, and they all came from various places. So, you know, some of them had always lived in cities and, you know, had never really ventured out. And some had come from very rural areas and spoke to us about how, you know, they could never catch a train, or if they missed one, it will be like another hour until the next one. And sometimes, you know, all the tickets will be gone because all of the people from like the, you know, the city before them just, you know, would take all the seats and things like that. So we found like a really interesting approach there, not only for our product development, but also just as a way to sort of understand more about sort of the human condition, which I know is a little bit of a deeper point, but I think it really just makes you more excited about the world we live in.
Amazing. Thank you, Faith. That was really, really interesting. So I think we just have time for maybe, I'll answer 2 more really quick questions because that will give me a chance to give a plug to the rest of the events in this series, and then we'll wrap up. So first of all, are there any lists that outline the contents we need to know for the technical interviews? The answer to that is that we have a technical interview workshop event on the 21st of October where we will go through all sorts of tips from 2 software engineers who interview a lot at Google. So you've got that to look forward to, and we will really go through that in detail then. And then we had a couple of questions around resumes, CVs. So around getting rejected at the resume screening phase, or what should your resume be striking for? What are the most important aspects to include? So we actually have a whole event dedicated to that next week, where we will have 2 engineers from different technical roles giving their tips on what they think makes a good software engineer, and also what you can do at university to really make the most of your time and develop your skills in those areas. So that's next week. It's on the 7th of October and it's at this time, so 6 p.m. CEST. And with that, I think we will wrap up. So thank you so much for joining. As I mentioned, our next event is next week. I personally can't wait, and I really hope that we see lots of you there. Our chat moderators in the comments have done their best to answer your questions, and we really hope that they've had the chance to get round to most of you. You will have more chance to ask questions, and we'll be covering lots of topics in more detail over the coming weeks. So we have 4 more events to go. And this one was recorded. So if you missed anything and want to watch it back, that's also an option right here on this website where you're watching it now. So with that, thank you so much for joining. And from me and the speakers, goodbye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.